Welcome back. Today's book is a peaceful, quiet book about a young girl and her father as they go looking for an owl in the woods, a great horned owl. Let's read. Owl Moon, written by Jane Yolen, illustrations by John Schoenherr. Jane Yolen moved to New York City and became an editor after graduating from college. And, amazingly enough, became a children's book writer, selling her first book on her 22nd birthday. It was called Pirates in Petticoats. She and her husband had 3 children, Adam, Jason, and Heidi. And Heidi is the model for the little girl in today's story. John Schoenherr was born in New York, New York in 1935 and died in 2010. He won a Caldecott Medal for the illustrations for today's book and illustrated more than 40 other children's titles during his career, as well as creating science fiction illustrations for magazines and book covers. He and his wife moved to a farmhouse in rural New Jersey following the birth of their first child, which helped rekindle his lifelong interest in wildlife, and he devoted much of his career to drawing animals. It was late one winter night, long past my bedtime, when Pa and I went owling. There was no wind. The trees stood still as giant statues, and the moon was so bright the sky seemed to shine. Somewhere behind us, a train whistle blew, long and low, like a sad, sad song. I could hear it through the woolen cap Pa had pulled down over my ears. A farm dog answered the train, and then a second dog joined in. They sang out, trains and dogs, for a real long time, and when their voices faded away, it was as quiet as a dream. We walked on toward the woods, Pa and I. Our feet crunched over the crisp snow, and little gray footprints followed us. Pa made a long shadow, but mine was short and round. I had to run after him every now and then to keep up, and my short, round shadow bumped after me. But I never called out. If you go owling, you have to be quiet. That's what Pa always says. I had been waiting to go owling with Pa for a long, long time. We reached the line of pine trees, black and pointy against the sky, and Pa held up his hand. I stopped right where I was and waited. He looked up, as if searching the stars, as if reading a map up there. The moon made his face into a silver mask. Then he called, "Hoo, hoo, 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 hoo," the sound of a great horned owl. "Hoo, hoo, 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 hoo." Again he called out, and then again. And after each call he was silent, and for a moment we both listened. But there was no answer. Pa shrugged, and I shrugged. I was not disappointed. My brothers all said, sometimes there's an owl, and sometimes there isn't. We walked on. I could feel the cold, as if someone's icy hand was palmed down on my back, and my nose and the tops of my cheeks felt cold and hot at the same time. But I never said a word. If you go owling, you have to be quiet and make your own heat. We went into the woods. The shadows were the blackest things I had ever seen. They stained the white snow. My mouth felt furry, for the scarf over it was wet and warm. I didn't ask what kinds of things hide behind black trees in the middle of the night. When you go owling, you have to be brave. Then we came to a clearing in the dark woods. The moon was high above us. It seemed to fit exactly over the center of the clearing, and the snow below it was whiter than the milk in a cereal bowl. I sighed, and Pa held up his hand at the sound. I put my mittens over the scarf over my mouth and listened hard. And then Pa called, "Hoo, hoo, 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 hoo." I listened and looked so hard my ears hurt, and my eyes got cloudy with the cold. Pa raised his face to call again, but before he could open his mouth, an echo came threading its way through the trees. "Hoo, hoo, 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 hoo." Pa almost smiled, and then he called back, "Hoo, hoo, 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 hoo," just as if he and the owl were talking about supper, or about the woods, or the moon, or the cold. I took my mitten off the scarf off my mouth, and I almost smiled too. The owl's call came closer, from high up in the trees on the edge of the meadow. Nothing in the meadow moved. All of a sudden, an owl shadow, part of the big tree shadow, lifted off and flew right over us. We watched silently with heat in our mouths, the heat of all those words we had not spoken. The shadow hooted again. Pa turned on his big flashlight and caught the owl just as it was landing on a branch. For 1 minute, 3 minutes, maybe even 100 minutes, we stared at one another. Then the owl pumped its great wing and lifted off the branch like a shadow without sound. It flew back into the forest. "Time to go home," Pa said to me. I knew then I could talk. I could even laugh out loud. But I was a shadow as we walked home. When you go owling, you don't need words or warm or anything but hope. That's what Pa says. The kind of hope that flies on silent wings under a shining owl moon. The end. Owl Moon was a particular pleasure for both the author and the illustrator. The author, Jane Yolen, says her husband, David, frequently went owling on winter nights with their 3 children, Heidi, Adam, and Jason, near their rural Massachusetts home. And the illustrator, John, said the whole story reminded him of his own nighttime walks with his children, Jennifer and Ian. And the picture of the farm at the beginning of the book is his family's farm. And the shadowed trees and trails in the book are landmarks which he and his family trudged past on winter nights, searching themselves for a magnificent and elusive owl. I've never gone owling. Have you? It must be marvelous, right? I like this book because it reminded me both of times with my father. No, we never went owling, but other times when we were just he and I together. And it reminded me of how beautiful is this world that God created for us to live in. How beautiful it is here when the trees are covered with snow. Maybe we'll be lucky this year and have a white Christmas, right? Come back next week and we'll have another story that reminds us of God's love and the beauty of everything around us. Bye-bye.